Good evening. I'm Rodney Rogers, president of Bowling Green State University, and we are coming to you live from the Maurer Center, the new home for the Schmidhorst College of Business here at Bowling Green on our Bowling Green campus at BGSU. You know, we've got a lot of returning students and their families, I'm sure, listening in, and we have new students and their families listening in. So for the returning students and your families, welcome back. You might remember we did quite a few of these virtual town hall meetings over the last 15 months as we worked our way through COVID-19. And for our newest students who are just joining us here this next week or so, and their family and parents that are listening in, I want to welcome you to the community of Bowling Green State University. It's an amazing place. And I want to start by once again acknowledging the amazing effort that has gone into working as a community to find a way forward during COVID-19 and these last 15 months. Our students have been amazing, our faculty and staff have been amazing of working together, finding a way to stay open the whole time, of course, and last year. And we found that by working together and listening to each other and learning from each other, that we were able to have face-to-face activities and all kinds of courses. And this fall, while the Delta variant is a last-minute sort of wrench that has been thrown into our situation, tonight we want to begin to explain to you the ways in which we will continue to find a way forward, just like we did last year, but now with a lot more tools, if you will, to make sure that we are providing a world-class educational experience both in and outside the classroom. And so tonight, I've got a couple of guests that will be making some comments. We'll first kick it to Ben Beatty. As you know, Mr. Beatty is our Chief Health and Wellness Officer, and Ben's been with us for about the last 12 months during this pandemic and has done great work in monitoring the public health. And in his role of both health and wellness, he's working on a lot of planning and a lot of the policies and procedures that we're following to make sure we have a safe reopen and that we continue to provide each of you a great education. We also have Ben Robinson with us. Ben is the Commissioner of Wood County Health Department. And we've asked Ben to join us today, and his colleague, certainly the Commissioner of Health at Erie County, which is where our Firelands College is based. But we here at Bowling Green have been working very closely with the Wood County Health Department, with the City of Bowling Green, because you see, we are this great college town. And at being a great college town, when our students arrive in the City of Bowling Green, it dramatically increases the population. Not just of the city, but the county. And so we want to make sure that we are great partners with our city and our county because we truly are one community here. And that is certainly the power of Bowling Green State University. A lot of our alums tell us that when they came here and had that great experience at Bowling Green, the city embraced them, the county embraced them to support them in their success. So Ben Robinson will be with us and talk a little bit from the perspective of the Wood County Health Department. We also, of course, have our Provost and Chief Academic Officer, Joe Whitehead. Dr. Whitehead will talk a little bit about what you can expect both from an academic experience and student affairs and all the planning that we're doing to welcome you to Bowling Green, welcome you back in many cases, but also welcome our newest students. And then finally, we've asked Amy Swann to join us. Amy is the director of our Office of Parent, Family, and New Student Connections. You might remember Amy joined us last year as a way that we have built out our connections with our families, the parents, making sure that you know that we have an office here that is working with you, supporting your student who's here at Bowling Green State University, but working to be very responsive to your concerns. So tonight we've got those 4 guests with us. Now, in the thread, you'll be able to ask any questions that you would like to ask. So we would urge you that in the thread, if you would just post any questions you might have. We have colleagues that are monitoring those questions, and we'll want to make sure we have an opportunity to get back and respond to some of those questions. Now, we may not get to all of those, so just know that we continue to build out our website with frequently asked questions, and those questions that you're asking, if those aren't already being answered in the FAQs, we'll include those there. So at this point, I'd like to turn it over to my colleague, Ben Beatty. Ben?
Thank you, President Rogers. I'm Ben Beatty, Chief Health Officer here at BGSU. We navigated this pandemic last academic year, and it was no small task. We really wanted to make sure that we updated you on what this looks like for the fall for us as well. So every step of the way last year, our community came together to meet the challenges. When we didn't have testing at the start of the fall semester, we worked closely with the Wood County Hospital to stand up a state-of-the-art lab to be able to do testing in a quick turnaround fashion, where other places it was taking sometimes 7 days to 10 days to get a result back. We were able to get results back within sometimes 1 to 2 days. At the same time, we really worked on our protocols with campus operations across campus, really changing all of our environment in a quick fashion. And we worked with our community partners with the City of Bowling Green to address off-campus activities as well. We worked very closely with the Wood County Health Department when vaccines became available and in contact tracing. We were able to work with their team to contact trace very quickly and provide isolation and quarantine spaces. And we stood up vaccine clinics on a massive scale at the Perry Fieldhouse with their help. So I'm really excited to introduce my public health colleague, Ben Robison, Health Commissioner of the Wood County Health Department. He's going to explain sort of the layout of what we're seeing right now in our local community when it comes to this Delta variant. And then I'll talk a little bit more around the protocols and what that's going to look like for this fall. So Ben?
Thank you, and good evening. My name is Ben Robison. I have the privilege of serving as the Wood County Health Commissioner here for our community. Right now, we have had the wrench, as President Rogers said, of encountering Delta. And what we know is that when Delta has taken root in a community, it quickly becomes the dominant variant in that community. And we expect that that will be our experience here as well. Because of Delta, we understand that transmission is easier than it was before. And we've gotten used to the reprieve that we've had from COVID over these last couple of months. We've had times here in Wood County where there were no cases for a few days in a row. And to have to return to what we saw before is discouraging, but also a call to action, which we're taking on collectively as a whole community. So as we look at Delta, we anticipate that there will be a period of time where there will be additional cases. And the extent to which we take on the mitigation measures that prevent the spread of disease will be directly related to our experience and our success in maintaining those things that are valuable to us, whether they're here in campus or within our broader community. President Rogers talked about the importance of community, and that could not be stressed any more than what he said, because as we approach this, it has to be in a partnership between students and the school, the parents and families that support the students, the administration, as well as local public health. So both here in Wood County and in Erie County, we're working closely with Bowling Green State University to ensure that what we have available supports all of you as you return to campus, and supports our faculty and staff as they begin to deliver education and make the programs that define Bowling Green State University and the experience you're hoping for possible. We have a year of data now, both at the university level and within our K-12 schools. And what we learned is that although we did see spread in our community, very rarely was that spread found in places where comprehensive prevention measures were undertaken. And so in our businesses, our K-12 schools, and in our universities, those were not the places that were driving our outbreaks. Instead, we saw outbreaks coming from other places, the social events, the family get-togethers, the neighborhood barbecues, the joining of multiple households to just spend time and to converse. And when people let their guard down in those social settings and reduce their distancing, remove their masks, those situations often contribute to spread. But in places like businesses and university classrooms and K-12 classrooms, very rarely was there ever transmission in those environments. And that's because of the commitment to the guidelines that help to prevent the spread of disease. And so we know that when we employ distancing, mask wearing, staying home when you're sick, which is so critical, whether you have COVID or not, if something looks like COVID, it can be disruptive in the life of someone. So staying home when you're sick helps to keep the university healthy. Following the guidelines that are provided by public health so that you don't potentially spread COVID, as well as doing other things like sanitizing, washing hands, and doing things like maximizing ventilation. When done together, these guidelines give us the best opportunity to continue the activities that we have valued and define our experience both here at BGSU and within Wood County. So as we approach these things this year, this roadmap will give us a path to begin to apply right from the very first day so that we can maintain the activities we value as much as we possibly can. And as we go through this pandemic, especially these next couple of months, our ability to work together, you as students, families in support with faculty and BGSU, as well as local public health, are going to give us the best opportunity to make adjustments as needed and to ensure that we position ourselves to not only to survive COVID, but to thrive and to enjoy our activities to the best of our ability, even as we have to make changes to the things around us. So I want to say thank you again, not only for the support of BGSU, but for your willingness to join our community. We are excited to have you back. You are a vital part of what defines Bowling Green for sure, and Wood County at large. So we're so glad to be able to be your host. We hope that many of you will make this your permanent home and raise a family here. And we hope that this next year is a reflection of our commitment to doing the things that keep us safe, and that our hard work we can look back on and be appreciative for what we're able to accomplish together. So with that, I'll give it back to Ben.
Thank you, Ben. So I'll talk a little bit around the protocols that you'll see in place this fall and how it's going to look a little different than last fall semester or even the spring. So we know how to navigate this virus because we've learned a lot. We've implemented many tools, and we've really figured out, wherever we face challenges, how to overcome those challenges when we came together. So ultimately, last year, if you're a returning student or a returning family, you probably got emails on a regular basis from me. You'll continue to see that. You'll continue to see our updated dashboards so that you at home and your students here can know exactly how our numbers are looking. We'll talk about, vaccination rates, and we're going to talk about testing as well. At the same time, when it comes to those components, we're going to really make sure we're showing you what is happening in our local community with our rates in Wood County and Erie County as well when we look at the Firelands campus. So with testing, we have a massive ability to test that we didn't have at this time last year. So we just picked up 8,000 at-home test kits from the state of Ohio, along with an additional 4,000 on-site test kits to add to our current surplus that we already had. Last year, the Medical Laboratory Sciences program was able to stand up large-scale rapid testing here on campus in the Student Union, and we worked with the Wood County Hospital to provide PCR testing as well. So that on-site rapid testing will be readily available multiple times a week, but even more important than that is that at-home test kits will be available to all faculty, staff, and students. And so anyone who wakes up with symptoms can potentially have a test kit in their residence hall or off campus at home. And as soon as they develop those symptoms, they can test right there within their own home, and we can diagnose very quickly to know whether we need to isolate or quarantine. At the same time throughout last year, we provided isolation space and quarantine space for our on-campus students, and that will continually be available throughout this year as well. We cared for those students by providing multiple meals and snacks throughout the day and daily check-ins as well to check on their mental health and their well-being. And so that process will continue as well this year. And we learned how to do it, and we're going to learn how to do it even better if that comes to need at a high demand. We never really saw large cases in our residence halls that prompted major concerns, and we're hopeful with contact tracing and quick quarantine and isolation, we'll have that same impact here in this upcoming semester as well. And then we look at vaccinations. Vaccinations are our number one tool to slow down the spread of this virus and prevent large number of cases. And so we're continuing to highlight vaccinations for all of our students and our faculty and staff. We've offered incentive programs and collecting vaccination rates to be able to continue to assess our community and where we stand when it comes to those vaccinations. So currently we've seen that we're at about 40% for our student population as a whole, and that's only been collected over the last couple weeks, and we continue to see that climb every day as students put voluntarily submit their status to our MedProctor system. And we just rolled out to collect the status for faculty and staff, but we're also confident that we have 51.5% of vaccinated students within our residence halls, and that number is continuing to climb. So we look forward to being able to use that as our first line of defense. Our next line is masks. So we know that numbers are continuing to climb because of the Delta variant, and so that's why we've asked all students, faculty, and staff to wear masks indoors in public locations. But that's the extent of our requirements when we're looking at the fall semester. So we intend to have a fully open fall semester with in-person activities with no requirements for physical distancing other than what works within a space and an environment, because we want your students to have that full experience. Also offering PPE if needed, or so personal protective barriers, whether that's plexiglass in a classroom if you have a student who's at risk, additional face shields for face coverings, or other barriers that we can assist them with. We want them to reach out to us so that we can help in those scenarios as well. So with that, to talk about the classroom space, Provost Whitehead has joined us, and I'll turn it over to him to kind of address what the classroom is going to look like.
Thanks, Ben. Good evening, everyone. I'm Joe Whitehead, Provost and Senior Vice President of Academic and Student Affairs here at BGSU. It's a pleasure to be with you tonight. It's exciting and challenging times. We've been through this before, and so we're leaning on our experiences from last year and working with Ben and facilities, putting protocols in place that will diminish the transmission of the virus. So what we're doing in the classroom, we learned some things last year that in-person experience is really what students want and families want, and it's a really great experience, so we're prioritizing the in-person experience. But we have several modes of delivery for class delivery. One mode is online, which hasn't changed. It was we had it pre-COVID and also during COVID. We discovered remote was another way to deliver courses during the pandemic last year. Remote means that students meet with faculty virtually at the pre-assigned time throughout the week. For example, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 9 to 9:50. We also, again, have in-person, which is our predominant mode of delivery. Again, we value that in-person experience, and students really love it, and that's what sets BGSU apart. Both the in-person experience in the classroom and also in the Res Life, and I'll get to Res Life shortly. We also learned during the pandemic that a combination of in-person and virtual is also advantageous in some cases. We have what's called the blended approach to course delivery, and that again is this majority in person, but there is some virtual engagement that occurs between the students and the faculty member. So those are our modes of delivery for fall 21, and we're able to do the in-person experience because of the guidance and protocols we put in place, working again with Ben Beatty and our facilities personnel. And so in the classroom, we'll have to wear face coverings, both faculty and students. We'll have normal seating, which is approximately 3 foot apart, which is recommended at this point in time. So with face covering and the 3 foot spacing, we're confident that we can minimize any virus transmission. What we learned last year was that there were no documented cases of virus transmission in the classroom when we had face coverings on. And so we're confident that we can move forward and really maximizing the student experience in the classroom, engaging with faculty and staff in meaningful ways. In terms of Res Life, we're back to normal occupancy in the dorms. If you recall last year, for some of us, we had single occupancy, which was not so desirable when we looked back at it and got feedback from our students. So we're back to normal occupancy. Again, face coverings are required inside buildings, but inside one's dorm room, the face coverings are not required. So there'll be a much more pleasant environment inside the dorms. We are planning a lot of activities, a lot of meetings and engagement with the students who live in residence in the dorms, because we know that engagement and interacting is really great and enhances the student experience here. And so There'll be both engagement and activities inside the dorms, but we're also going to take advantage of the great weather in Northwest Ohio. And when I say that, everybody laughs because no one thinks the weather's great in Northwest Ohio. But this time of year, it really is good. And so we'll take advantage of the pleasant fall weather and have many activities outside to engage with our students. So we're excited and we're looking forward to moving forward with the fall semester and in a successful way as we did last year. And as Ben said, we have more tools to deal with mitigating the virus transmission with vaccinations. We have face coverings again, and we just know a whole lot more this year than we did last year. So thanks again. I will now switch over to my colleague, Amy Swann, who is the Director of Parent, Family, and New Student Connections. I want to welcome Amy aboard. She just got here not long ago, and so I'm sure she's enjoying the Northwest Ohio weather also.
Thank you, Provost Whitehead. I am indeed enjoying the weather in Northwest Ohio. So excited to be able to spend some time with our Falcon families. I am Amy Swank, and my job is working with our families in a variety of different ways. As President Rogers mentioned in his opening remarks, our office was created specifically to support our families, to connect them deeper to the institution. And the way in which we do that is often through our communication channels, with a newsletter, our social media, as well as different events and programming that will roll out this fall. What I want to say to Falcon families is we need your partnership. It's vital to our students being successful inside and outside the classroom. And as we build our partnership and this office continues to support you all and connect you deeper to the institution, we want you to know that these services and this office is here to support and advocate for all of you and to connect with us as often as you need. We'll work very closely with Ben and his team to be able to get the information and communicate with you in a timely manner so that you can support your student and their health. We plan this fall to have a new family portal that will roll out in September sometime so that you'll have a space to build your community with other Bowling Green State University families, as well as stay deeply connected to us. We want to reiterate, as my colleagues have, that your partnership and your support helps your students be successful, as well as we want to share with you that your community and your belonging here at Bowling Green State University is very important, and that we need this partnership so that your students can be successful. We will do that through a variety of different ways through our events and programming. We understand that having meaningful interactions with the university and your student is really important so that they can be successful here. So be on the lookout for opportunities to engage with us both virtually and in person so that we can build that toolkit of support for your student. We're looking forward to continuing to build the office so that we can support you in the best way possible. And know at any time that if you need an advocate or you need a contact on campus, our office is here to support you. And we will work with our colleagues to make sure that we get your questions or support to the right area. I want to turn it over to President Rogers so we can start our Q&A.
Thank you, Amy. So I want to thank my colleagues that are with me here this evening as we provide you additional information about this fall. I think you heard from each one of us how excited we are to have you back at Bowling Green, either here on our Bowling Green campus or in the Firelands campus. We're very excited about the fall. I'll tell you, as I'm looking out the window here on Worcester Street, the traffic has picked up a great deal. Groups of students have already started arriving. So now we want to respond to questions that you might have that perhaps you've posted on the thread already, but if there's some questions that any of us can respond to, we'd like to do that at this time. So I'll turn it over to my colleague to ask us some questions.
Great. Amy, we had a couple of questions already about family communication, supporting students, specifically from a parent who, students last year had a tough time with COVID at BGSU. How best to contact your office? What does that communication and support look like?
It's a great question. So there's lots of ways in which families can connect with us. We have a general inbox that we answer within minutes, sometimes no later than 24 hours, and that's families@bgsu.edu. Families can certainly contact me. My contact information is located on the Family Connections website, both phone number and email. If social media is your preferred platform, we do have an Instagram account or our Facebook page that you can send us a message through, and we'll respond in that way. Those are probably the best ways to get a hold of us. If it is a more emergency-like, we do ask our families to connect, obviously, with our colleagues at the police department on campus. But if it's a non-emergency, please connect and engage with our office. We also have a way for families, if you're more comfortable, to fill out a referral form. That referral form is also located on our website, and you can refer your student for any type of support and services. Again, I want to mention this is a non-emergency referral form. If it is emergency, we want you to contact the proper emergency personnel. So those are the best ways to get in contact with us so that we can start to activate what I call our safety net and support your students so that they can be as successful as possible.
Thanks, Amy. Provost Whitehead, we had several questions about classroom experience for fall semester. So I'll just hop right in on if students, I think first off with Thanksgiving in particular. Last academic year, BGSU went online after Thanksgiving. Will that be the plan for this fall, or is the plan to be in person moving forward?
Thanks for the question. The plan is to be in person after Thanksgiving this year, and so we'll have in-person classes beginning August 26th, and we'll go through just before Thanksgiving, take the Thanksgiving break, and then we'll start up again with in-person classes until the final week of exams. So we're planning to go fully in person the entire semester.
Thank you. And then a couple other follow-up questions. If my student contracts COVID-19 and can't be able to make class and they have an in-person class, are there any accommodations from the faculty perspective?
Yes, they are. We've been talking with the deans and working with department chairs and also talking to faculty how we can navigate that situation. So what we look at it is if there was an illness prior to COVID, our faculty were very flexible in working with students in order to help them stay up with their work, even though they could not attend class. So we're taking the same approach now with COVID. So if a student can't make it to class because they're quarantining or isolating, there are a number of opportunities for them to engage with the faculty. One is the faculty member could actually post their materials in our learning management system called Canvas, and so the student can look at that material and stay abreast of what's going on in class while they're not in class, in quarantining or isolating. In addition to that, we're encouraging the students to reach out to the faculty, and they can actually have meetings with the faculty during office hours or by appointment through virtual means, like Zoom meetings and those type things. So that way the student can stay in contact virtually with the professor, but not physically having to go to the office of the professor. The other thing can do is, in certain cases, we can record lectures, and then students can actually review those lectures at their leisure while they're quarantining. Well, they won't be leisurely quarantining, but they can look at the lectures while they're quarantining. So there are a number of ways that students can still engage with their professors when they're not in class. And so we're working again to make sure everybody knows this and get people on board and be very flexible in supporting our students in their progression, even though they may be out due to an illness.
Looking for a couple of parents are looking for clarification on course delivery modes. The students enrolled class as it is today, whether in person or online, is what the plan is going to be for the fall semester.
Yes. We've communicated and we've decided that, okay, the mode of delivery that starts the semester will be the mode of delivery throughout the semester. And so we're committed to doing that because we understand that it could be difficulties if we were to switch modes of course delivery. And so we're committed to, at present, to hold the mode of delivery as the way the course started at the beginning of this semester.
Thank you. Ben, we're getting questions on health measures for the upcoming fall semester. So I just run through the list. And BGSU rolled out Vax BGSU, an incentive program for students. Faculty and staff announcement was today. Can you expand and provide an update on the current vaccination rate for students, faculty, and staff?
Yeah, so currently, because we just started collecting for faculty and staff, we don't have that current vaccination rate. And for students, and for the student population overall, and this is on-campus and off-campus students, we have achieved 40%, and that's 40% who have voluntarily submitted their vaccination card to us, and we've been able to confirm that card. That doesn't mean that our entire vaccination rate of our student population is only at 40%. That's just what we've reached thus far. This program goes on through the month of September, and we'll be continually encouraging students to submit their vaccination cards to us, and we have some great prizes that they can win as well. At the same time, we've been able to separate that student group into off-campus and on-campus students, and within our residence halls, we've achieved 51.5% as of today for our vaccination rate. We expect that to continue to go up as well, and so we'll continually update that over the course of the next several weeks as we see that change, and we'll keep everybody posted on what that vaccination rate is.
Thank you. We're getting a couple of questions about, similar to vaccination, about public and private entities requiring or mandating masks in Ohio and across the nation. Will BGSU mandate vaccinations?
Yeah, so we've been very clear throughout the pandemic that one, here in Ohio, we have House Bill 244, which actually, as long as the vaccinations are under an emergency use authorization, the law says that public K-12 and public universities cannot mandate that vaccination. The law does not go into effect until October, but we intend to honor the intent of the legislation for that law, so we won't be mandating the vaccine under that emergency use authorization. And we've been clear that we've been working with families around vaccination. We've been flexible throughout the pandemic when it comes to different beliefs. And when it comes to symptomatic testing, we found it to be extremely accurate. And so that's one of the things that we've utilized to really pick up those cases when somebody wakes up and thinks, maybe I have a cold, maybe it's the flu, maybe it's just allergies. And we've been able to test and find those to be extremely accurate. We'll have those test kits available for pickup at all of the front desks of the residence halls, at the Student Rec Center front desk, the front desk of the library, and the front desk of the Student Union, along with on Firelands campus as well.
Getting a couple follow-up questions about masks. Will masks be required in residence halls? And also, will masks be required in indoor buildings?
So, our intent is masks are required in indoor public locations. So when you're out in public, so when you're in your individual residence hall room, with a friend, no requirement for masks in your own residence space. Now, when you go into some of the public areas within the residence halls, we'd ask you to put that mask on. Same thing with public indoor buildings. When you are in a building, making your way through public spaces, we want you to make sure that you have that face covering on. We'll see the same thing in any sort of indoor sporting events or activities. But I also want to make clear that this is not necessarily like last year, where face coverings just stayed with us for the entire academic year. Our intent is to really watch the numbers, and when we see the trend of this Delta wave start to subside, to make some decisions when it's appropriate to actually be able to go to where face coverings are just a recommendation at that point for those who are unvaccinated. So we don't intend for this to sort of be a permanent protocol for the entire academic year.
And can you provide an update on the mask policy for the Recreation Center?
Yeah, so essentially for the areas where we said individuals can take their mask off if they so choose is essentially when you're actively eating or drinking or when you're actively exercising. So in any space where the mask may interfere a little bit with respirations as well. And so we found this to be a struggle for our students and faculty and staff last year, exercising at the Student Rec Center. So essentially if a group of individuals is playing basketball together and they choose to not wear their mask in that setting, we're allowing that. But when you come off the court, you're back in that public space, and we'd want you to put that mask on. When we looked at the risks versus the benefits of those decisions, we knew in those areas that's where our students really struggled with mask wearing last year, and so we wanted to accommodate the same way. The other thing we've looked at is in certain academic settings, say in the speech pathology labs or in other labs where an individual we need to see their facial expression in theater classes. We're going to allow face shields in those settings so that individuals can still participate in the activity that they love, but still have some level of protection in that setting.
Earlier, we touched on BGSU, which is to verify vaccination status. But do students need to bring their vaccination cards to campus?
So I really encourage you to either bring your vaccination card with you or take a picture of it on your phone so that you always have that with you. You never know when you may lose your card, and so we get a lot of requests from students who even came through our Perry Fieldhouse site, and the health department's been very gracious to provide replacement cards for all of those students. But we want to make sure that you do have that with you because it may not necessarily be our requirement here for you to show that card, but we do have some organizational settings where vaccination status is important. You can imagine a nursing student going into a clinical setting where the outside hospital organization is going to want to see that vaccination status to allow that individual to come into that setting. And so we have some different areas where that vaccination card could be important, not necessarily required by BGSU, but required for that activity you want to participate in.
Couple of follow-ups on vaccination. Recently in the news, there's a lot of conversation about booster shots. Will BGSU be offering booster shots this fall?
Yeah, so what I'd like to tell families and students is that we worked all last academic year to stand up our capacity to what the need was. So when we saw a need within our community, we worked really hard to meet that need, whether it was through testing or vaccinations, or quarantine or isolation and assisting students. And we intend to do the same exact thing this academic year. So if booster doses are recommended, we will look to make those widely available. So we're having vaccine clinics early here in the fall semester. We've worked with Falcon Health Center to offer walk-in vaccinations Monday through Friday for any faculty, staff, or student or community member that decides they want to be vaccinated. And then at the same time, we can do the same thing for booster shots. We'll have flu shot clinics, I'm sure, in our partnerships with the Wood County Health Department and with the Erie County Health Department and the Falcon Health Center. And we can do the same if we need to stand up those booster shot doses. Not knowing exactly what audience that may or who may be eligible for that. If it's older adults, we'll work with our faculty and staff. But if it does go down to those student populations, we'll work to make those available as well.
Been a couple of follow-ups on testing strategy. Will students be tested at the start of the semester upon arrival? And then will BGSU be doing surveillance testing for students, both unvaccinated and vaccinated this academic year?
Yeah, so what you'll see upon arrival is, especially for our on-campus residence hall students, is just a screening tool. So we've developed a screening tool with just a very brief series of questions to sort of screen if somebody's experiencing symptoms today or had a recent exposure, or are you awaiting still a COVID-19 test result. Depending on that, we'll move the individual to a more in-depth screening, sort of a conversation with myself or someone from my team to ask more in-depth questions on the answers that we may get. Depending on what those answers would lead us to, that could lead to a residence hall student being screened upon arrival. But for the most part, if you're not coming to campus with symptoms and haven't had a recent exposure or are not awaiting a COVID-19 test, that wouldn't necessarily be a requirement right upon arrival. Ultimately, we really found benefit in symptoms, when people had symptoms, getting them tested as quickly as possible. So we may not have our randomized surveillance testing that we did last year. We'll continually talk with the health department on what the best use of that testing modality is. But we may strategically test in certain areas. If all of a sudden we see an increase in a particular residence hall, that may be an opportunity for us to go in and provide testing for the vast majority of students within that setting. If we would see an outbreak on a particular athletic team or a club sport team, we may move in and try to, in that particular setting, emphasize more strategic testing in those areas.
I've gotten this question several times. Will students who are vaccinated, can they opt out from living with an unvaccinated roommate?
Yeah, so that's a tricky question because one, we don't always know somebody's vaccination status here on campus, so we don't want to discriminate against somebody. And House Bill 244 actually keeps us from discriminating or treating someone differently based on vaccination status. So that's something we highly encourage you to, one, talk with your roommate about, prior to arrival, and have that conversation, around maybe some of those personal beliefs. But then at the same time, if you need to reach out to Residence Life to help navigate that conversation, we encourage you to do so as well, because we're always trying to be flexible and to really serve our students to what their needs are.
Last academic year, our residence hall students had like a stricter guest policy before we relaxed that. What's the plans going into this academic year?
Yeah, currently walking into this academic year, we don't have any plans for restricting guests because what we learned, what we know now is those students are going to spend time together, whether it's in that residence hall room or potentially off campus, at a restaurant or other setting, or in the student union together eating lunch. So we don't have any intention for restrictions on any of our guest policies for this year, and that's where we've continually learned from this last academic year. We've created a blueprint on how to navigate COVID, and we're continually getting better at it. Another thing that you saw last year was a lot of the one-way entrances and exits and one-way staircases, because there was concern around people passing and what that looked like when we were first learning about COVID. Now we know it takes a prolonged exposure of generally at least 15 minutes within 6 feet of distance of somebody who's potentially contagious with COVID. And so you won't see some of those same environmental impacts as well. And same thing with the residence hall entries and exits. I got that question from some of the current students as to whether that will be controlled. And so that'll look a little different.
Ben, can you clarify what tests are being used upon arrival and for students? Specifically, there were some comments about an FDA recall recently.
Okay, we use the Binax Now, the Abbott Binax Now rapid test. It's a 15-minute nasal swab that we've used successfully throughout last year. That's our on-site test, and that is the same brand that is the at-home test. We also have PCR tests available as well around basically through Falcon Health. We can PCR test, and that takes a little bit longer, more that 24 to 48 hours to get that turnaround time. I know one thing around our Abbott Binax Now test, the expiration date has continually been extended, and so that's something that's actually worked in our favor because we've been able to carry our stock forward. But that's just because their studies on that test has continued to advance to say that the shelf life is very stable on that test.
Before we turn to the provost for some additional academic questions, just had a couple of follow-ups on testing. Where are the at-home tests available for students on campus?
Yep, so again, those will be available at the front desk of all the residence halls, at the front desk of the student union, front desk of the library, along with the front desk of the student rec center. And then we'll have a stock of them as well at the Firelands campus.
Thank you. Provost, I had a couple questions about academic requirements, specifically about internships. Can internships be completed virtually for at-risk students?
In some cases, yes. It depends on the organization they're interning with, but that's a trend that happened last year. The virtual internships became more common, so you have to work with the organization that you're interning with or plan to intern with to see if the virtual internship is a possibility.
And then a unique question about the College of Musical Arts. How are the CMA Protect students in the wind ensembles, especially for masks while playing and performing?
Okay, that's a question for the provost, huh? Not the chief health officer. So we're discussing protocols with Ben, and the dean of the College of Musical Arts is in conversation with Ben about the special situations that occur in the performing arts. And there's an analogy been made between performing arts and athletics. And at this point, I'll turn it over to Ben with the expert response.
Yeah, so we actually just recently had a meeting to really discuss what that's going to look like, because we recognize there's some particular classroom settings that may be more eligible for spread within that. We just project better, you know, if you're singing or playing a musical instrument. So our plan was to create additional spaces for those interactions to occur. So whether that's go to a larger room to be able to space out further, some protections on the instruments, or ability to maybe wear a face shield if I'm singing, where I can still project, but not have to have that mask so close to my face. We're looking at the individual music rooms where one-on-one class sessions may occur between an instructor and a student, and potentially in those settings that may be an opportunity for a virtual lesson as well. If that's a really tight enclosed space where they're going to be working together, we may recommend that if the student and the faculty member aren't comfortable in that setting, that it's potential to be virtual. The other option is to move some of these things outside. Again, we talked about early on in this semester, as we're bringing everybody back together and we really want to assess our case rates and get everybody settled in, we're going to be planning a lot more outdoor activities. And so some of these classroom scenarios may take place outside, and so singing, choir practices may be going on the lawn. We're working with campus ops to create some spaces for musical instruments and practices, and that may actually just provide an even nicer environment for other students as well that are making their way across campus.
Ben, looking at events on campus, commencements this weekend, opening weekend move-in, what's the plan for large-scale events if the Delta variant is present?
Yeah, so currently we're working on, we're operating from the place of, outdoors is a lower risk than indoors from a transmission perspective. And so outdoor mask wearing is just really recommended for those who are unvaccinated, but everybody can choose to wear a mask, based on their own personal risk level. So we're going to continue to monitor those spaces and watch for, Delta variants or any sort of other issues that we see with case spread in those environments. And again, trying to plan those outdoor events, especially when we're having large groups of people coming together to participate. We'll really look at that to be outdoors for as long as we can till the weather changes, and then we'll get creative.
Thanks, Ben. Amy, I have a couple of questions from sophomores, parents and families, second-year students, and what the consideration is being given for their orientation and their welcome and transition to Bowling Green, given that last year's orientation was online and the lack of events and programs.
That's a great question. So one of the first things that our second year cohort will see is during Welcome Week, there is specific programming that will be provided for that group of students. We recognize that those students missed out on some of the traditions and opportunities, and we want to make sure that they have that opportunity to be able to connect with their peers as well as the rest of the university. What's great about Welcome Week is it's about welcoming all of our students. So while we'll have some specific events for our first year students and our second year cohort, we will have a picnic with President Rogers for our entire community. There'll be an event called Flock the Block, which will divide the university up into multiple blocks and have different offerings. And that's for all of our students, recognizing that we all need to reconnect and feel connected to our community here at Bowling Green State University. So those are a few of the offerings. One of the things that my team just recently sat down and talked with is this idea that we all need to be reoriented to the university, especially our second year students who didn't have that traditional orientation. So we are exploring opportunities to have offerings throughout the first semester so that they can be reoriented to BGSU, and really looking forward to making sure that group feels connected with the institution.
Thanks, Amy. Ben, have some additional follow-up on health measures for Bowling Green, especially around our vaccination rate. And is BGSU taking into account potential natural immunity from those individuals who have already previously contracted COVID-19?
Certainly, we do take that into account. We're not tracking that so much as tracking that number. We do know we have a number of students last year that were positive, and my team worked directly with them. And so we do have those records. And that's one thing we're looking at is how does this Delta variant interact with individuals who have natural antibodies or vaccinated antibodies. And so ultimately, we really are hopeful that we're at a position where our herd immunity is reaching that point where we're not going to see large case numbers continue to climb upwards. You know, we've seen some of this in southern states, but that's where in areas there were much lower vaccination rates than what we have here locally. And so ultimately, hopefully those two things together of high vaccination rates with some natural immunity actually really helps to kind of provide that community immunity that we're hoping to achieve.
There's a student who's having trouble with MedProctor and may not be the only one submitting vaccination status. Who can they contact if they have problems to ensure that their vaccine status is verified?
Yeah, absolutely. If you're having any issues with that at all, you can reach out to health@bgsu.edu. My team monitors that, and we've gotten some of those questions already, and we can get you connected to make sure that you're in the system and counted for. And if you have any issues, you can reach out, and we can make sure that we verify that for you.
A couple of students have submitted concerns about safety in large lecture halls with large capacity for students. Kind of walk us through our safety measures for those types of classroom settings.
Yeah, absolutely. So in large lecture halls or in large classroom settings, there's still going to potentially be some opportunities to physically distance. And so that's one thing that I've seen sort of naturally happening when giving some presentations just recently. So some students who have already arrived back are RAs. You know, we'd go into a lecture hall and I'd be giving a talk to them, and they seem to just naturally spread out. I think we've all sort of learned some of these behaviors, and now they're ingrained. And so I think we can see that in a lot of different locations, that if you're one who is particularly concerned or feel like you have risk levels that are a little bit higher, first and foremost, your first line of defense is to be vaccinated. Second line of defense is to have a mask on. A third line of defense could be a face shield. We can potentially, space you into a corner in one of those lecture halls so that we give you a little bit of distance as well. And we still have plexiglass shields, portable plexiglass shields that we can use as an accommodation as well. And so all of those barriers can build upon each other to really create a safe space. As Ben Robinson from the health department talked about, when we were in scenarios where everyone was masked, with that 3 feet of distancing, and that's what we're working to achieve in all of our classrooms is 3 feet of distancing. And I will say that's nose to nose, so it doesn't always look like 3 feet, but that's the standard that seems to have worked well in K through 12 schools. So ultimately, we can provide all of those things to really create levels of protection where we didn't see spread within classrooms last year. And so we intend to use all of those tools again in our toolbox to keep those classrooms very safe.
Can you clarify just athletics events for students and for the public moving forward, those open at full capacity?
Yeah, essentially, we're starting, athletic events full capacity. All we would ask, the only restriction, if it's an indoor athletic event, that our patrons wear masks within that scenario. But if it's an outdoor athletic event, football would be at full capacity and open. And as I like to say, hopefully the ventilation system from the wind in Bowling Green is so high that it really is going to have that great turnover of air, which will help to keep any potential COVID spread at a very low minimum.
And we want to go back to a couple of follow-up questions about weeks of welcome. Kind of both sides, more students want in-person events, but some students want virtual events. Will there be a combination of both?
So we recognize that both in-person and virtual events are what our students want, depending on their comfort level. And so we are creating some offerings so that students, if they want that virtual opportunity, they can have that. So there will be a link shared with certain students around convocation if they want to attend convocation virtually, or even the welcome night events. There'll be an opportunity for those events to be live streamed, et cetera. So we are thinking about the opportunity to make sure that we have those offerings. I'll go on to say too that even with our family weekend events, we are planning some of those events to be virtual, knowing that some students and families, and because of maybe health risks in a home, they want to participate in family events together, but don't want to be on campus or in person. So our team is building out some virtual opportunities so that can take place wherever their comfort is. But we've definitely looked into opportunities so that we can accommodate those students as well.
Thanks, Amy. Ben, before we turn to the president for some final comments for today's town hall, I'm just going to theme the questions about experiences for students outside the classroom and what does it look like for the fall, specifically about intramural sports, student travel, because that was restricted last year for like extracurricular activities, and also dining. What does dining look like for the fall? So if you can comment on that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, when it comes to intramurals or athletics, we entirely recognize that the restrictions last year, while necessary, really took a toll on our students. And there's another component to this pandemic as well, that there's the risk of the virus, but in public health, we also look at the risk for mental health, social isolation, increased substance use disorders that can come from this. And so we're navigating both sides of those risks. Intramurals is, especially if they're outdoor intramural activities, that's a great way to meet new people and get physical activity and participate with your friends. And so we anticipate that being fully open. When we look at travel, we don't have any restrictions on travel currently, and so we're going to continue to look for the organizations that set up those travel parameters. There may be some scenarios, though, where if you're traveling for an event at another college campus, there may be a requirement from that college campus to provide proof of vaccination. We've seen other areas where to participate in a certain event for an organization, that's a requirement. And so that would be the only restriction, but it's not necessarily BGSU's restriction on that travel or that activity. We may have testing in those scenarios. If individuals are going to be traveling together in close quarters, that we may want you to get tested prior to going on that trip and potentially when you get back. But we still want you to be able to go and participate in that activity. And then dining, as we said, you obviously have to remove your mask when you're actively eating or drinking. And so those dining spaces will be open for those activities. We want you to, again, stay in your close social circle on some levels when you're doing those activities. If you can't mask up, you can still keep your group small and you can still provide distance in some of those spaces. So sit away, just like we saw in restaurants last year, throughout last academic year, that when you're done actively eating and drinking, you can put that face covering back on as you're making your way through the dining facility or through the student union. But we still want you to have that social experience.
Thanks, Ben. President Rogers for some final remarks.
Well, thank you. Thank each of you for joining us tonight. And I want to make sure I thank our colleagues that are with us tonight that spoke. They're working with teams of staff and faculty across this institution to welcome our students back and make sure that you have a great experience. When I think a year ago, we did a town hall about this time, a few weeks before the opening of the class. And last year we certainly worked to be very flexible with our students. Design My BGSU we launched, where we gave students opportunities to make choices in the kind of experience they wanted. But I think here where we are today relative to a year ago, a year ago we were scrambling trying to find test kits that we could quickly provide feedback to students and faculty and staff around the results of a COVID test. We have those now. We have a way adequate supply that'll be easily available. When I think about a year ago, the vaccine was a promise. It wasn't delivered, and now it has been delivered, and millions and millions and millions of people have taken that vaccine. We were scrambling to make sure we had adequate PPE, personal protection equipment. Well, we have very much adequate PPE right now. So when I think about all the things that we have today that we didn't have a year ago, that is why we are confident that we will find a way forward this next year to get back to as much normal as possible. But you know, we want to be a new normal. I think we want to make sure that we learn from different things of this pandemic as we continue to work through it, to make sure your education, your academic experience, your out of the classroom experience is world class and is preparing you truly to go out and do amazing things when you graduate from this institution. I also want to comment that this virus has shown cracks perhaps in our communities, and there's all different perspectives on this virus and a variety of other issues. But I want to be clear that the fight that we have here is against the virus. It's not against each other. It's against the virus. And I think one of the reasons Bowling Green has been very successful this last year in finding a way forward is that we believe in the power of community. We believe in the power of coming together. And so we have tried to make sure that we are adaptable and flexible, being thoughtful and respectful for all kinds of opinions and views, but at the end of the day, coming together to say, okay, this is how we are going to navigate together. And that has led to us being successful so far of navigating this global pandemic. And that is why certainly it's my honor to serve in this role and to be a part of this community, because we have people who are willing to find a way forward, listen to each other, learn from each other. Getting the vaccine or not, and I've hesitated whether I'm going to bring this up, but I want to bring this up. I think we have worked hard to be respectful of a variety of different views on the vaccine or not. We are not requiring a vaccine, for example. But life is full of all types of risks that each of us take, and we make certain decisions, and we want to weigh the risks of different decisions we make. And so I simply ask that each of you weigh those risks, critically think through the risk of the vaccine, the risk of not being given and receiving the vaccine. We just hope that each of you be very thoughtful in thinking through what that means to you, what that means to perhaps family members or friends. It's your decision, but we hope that you will critically think about that decision and think through the pros and cons, and we certainly have done that. I've done that personally. I've done that with family members, and I believe the risk of not getting the vaccine is higher for me and my family and family members and friends. But that's your decision. But please think about that very critically. And in conclusion, I just want to again thank you for taking the time this evening to join us. For our returning students, I can't wait to get you back on campus. I know we have a great community here that is so excited. The City of Bowling Green and BGSU, in fact, we're doing a joint event together downtown, the City of Bowling Green, the rally at BG, and we're going to block off Main Street and the town gown opportunity to bring the community together. But there are so many other ways that we plan to welcome you back. And our sophomore students, the second year students, as Amy said, we've got all kinds of programming for you. For our newest students, we are so excited to welcome you to the Bowling Green family. So to each of you, we hope you have a wonderful evening. Thank you for joining us. And as we say here at Bowling Green, Ai Ziggy Zumba.